fishing before the games.
Before
in
the
little
game,
pond.
I'd drive in and he'd be fishing, and I just
And Terry Crisp and Roman butted heads.
oh, they didn't like each other.
But
Oh.
at Grove,
Roman is 19 years old, coming out of the, or 18, coming out of the
18.
Czech Republic.
Couldn't speak English, but Crispy just did not like me.
and he would go out and drive Crispy nuts. He'd go fishing before the game. And I'll never forget,
Well,
Toronto
he
came
told
back.
me, Crispy said, you got to do something about it. I said, what's wrong? I says, he's got an hour and a half before the game. If he wants to fish and relax, then that's fine. Who cares?
You talk to the players, and we had a great group of players. You know, our entire payroll is less than the equipment budget is now.
Now.
What was the payroll the first
It
year?
was
Well,
like
about
5.8 million.
5.8 million.
You can't buy a defenseman.
You can't buy anything anymore in hockey with that.
You talk to the players in that little locker room that we built. People used to come wandering in, carrying their pronto pumps during the fair.
Wayne Cashman said this. One guy said, can I help you? He says, isn't this where I go to the bathroom? Cashman said, go ahead in there.
So Toronto came in. I remember their fans. It was cheaper for them to come down, see a game, than get tickets in the Garden, Maple Leaf Garden. And they came down, and I'll never forget the players and the fans. The fair was going on, and they were looking around, the players going, what in the hell is going on? And meanwhile, the fans were walking around.
We had a great group of guys, older
We
guys,
did.
like Basil. I see
Basil McRae.
He's always up here because he lives down.
Yeah, he's a scout in the
South
NHL
John
player.
But
Tucker,
he's the
Joe
assistant
Ricci.
GM with Columbus.
Well, didn't players across the league, I know when you were holding the exhibition,
They didn't want to
Gretzky
play
was-
here in the beginning.
You don't think?
No, they
Gretzky
didn't.
and I thought the players, my take, they all wanted add teams and add warm weather is going to be good. I'll come here and play.
Yeah, but they weren't going to get paid as much with us.
No.
Is that the resistance point
Well, everybody took less money
to come here?
to be here. I mean, from me right down to the stick boy.
How did you hire first? How did you hire Crispy and why Crispy?
Crispy worked for me when in junior hockey in Sault Ste. Marie when I owned the team. Yeah, and Crispy, I think he went to the Memorial Cup, which is emblematic of the Stanley Cup in junior hockey in Canada. And I knew Terry from playing against him in junior B.
All the way back there.
And he got 11 points in his last game to beat me by 1 point in the scoring championship in junior B. And I had scored 11 points the game before.
You got to let that go.
Oh, I know. I remember it because he's never forgotten, and he gives it to me.
He had
too.
a heck of an
And that's
NHL
okay.
career. I mean, he had won as the head coach of the Calgary Flames.
Yes,
he
but
had won the Stanley Cup.
Terry Crisp
And he was great.
was good with the older players, and we knew they were going to get older players here. I knew that, and sooner or later, the game plan was simple. I told Terry 3 years, and then you move in. No, we didn't have a director of professional scouting. I saved that job for Terry, right? And he was supposed to move in there. Okay?
Was Tony doing a lot of this?
Oh, yeah,
himself?
Tony was doing
Tony
everything.
Tony was doing a lot of this.
Hall of Famer in Tony.
In fact, he spent a New Year's. So he was working so hard.
He
one
spent New Year's
in
in
a
a-
teepee
in a
in
teepee up in-
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan, in the wilds of Saskatchewan, him and Donnie Murdoch.
John Murdoch, great ranger. They're looking for players? Is that
Yes.
living in a teepee in
Tony,
Saskatchewan?
when he called me,
New Year's Eve.
he said, you know, Phil, I've done a lot of things, but this is ridiculous. I slept in a teepee.
Dougie
They're
McCauley-
drinking fire water.
Dougie McCauley took him out there to scout a certain player. That was his area, Saskatchewan. And he said he took him to a party New Year's Eve. That was the party. They were passing the jug.
So, okay, so we go to Montreal. This is the draft. You're going to have the draft. I put on my reading glasses here, right?
The expansion draft.
The expansion draft. You're in Montreal. Remember it to the
Yes.
day.
Oh, God,
all right,
yeah.
and they list the names of both teams up on there. But if I look at this, under the rules it was, you went for defense. If I look at how you drafted, just by position, in sequence, you start with the goaltender. There's a story there.
But you had to start with the goalie. They made you start with the goaltender.
And by the way, who was available to us was not much.
It would change, wouldn't it, the next year?
It changed
That's
dramatically.
what I got so angry about. So for next year it changed.
I think you could protect two and an exemption of up to like 3 or 4 years.
We ended
pro.
up getting their third or fourth goalie.
So you get Wendell
At best.
Young from the Pittsburgh Penguins
And I traded for Jablonski
for
from
Jabber,
St. Louis because we had Bergeron.
right?
Was his
J.C. Bergeron.
J.C. Bergeron.
out of Montreal.
But he was one weirdo. I'll tell you
A year
He'd
later,
go in the stick room and
That was after a bad game.
Okay, so you get
meditate.
you get a goal, but this in sequence. We are going to go through 5 consecutive defensemen, and they all could play.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
And they all played.
from the Islanders, Joe Ricci, right, had a heck of a career. Sean Chambers would go on to win a cup. Came from
Yep.
Washington, won a cup. Sean could play. Peter Taglianetti from Pittsburgh, which just won the cup.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to stop
Peter
me on any of
Taggs,
these
I love
names,
that.
why you took them, Doug Crossman.
Well,
Quebec.
Cross still holds the record, I think, for 6 points
Yes,
in
he
the
does.
game.
The first year, your first year, you go to New York, okay? You go to New York, November, and you play back-to-back games. You play Saturday the Islanders, Monday the Rangers. Crossman against Al Arbor has that 6-point game,
Yeah.
and you win in overtime. You win that game. Monday, you play Richter in the Garden, and you beat him. What a weekend that was.
That was a great weekend.
Sure was, first month.
And I was home watching on TV because to travel was too expensive.
We were flying commercial.
We flew commercial and it just was another thing. I mean, Tony wanted to go. 2 of us there is ridiculous.
He wanted to go to New York.
Tony wanted to go on the road with the team.
Oh, okay.
He believed in that. He wanted to watch. Because I was broadcasting before I became a general manager for 3 years, I could watch the game on TV and analyze. I believe that. I still believe it. Okay, doing radio is a lot easier because I can keep looking and on TV you got to sort of follow the puck a little bit. On radio you can move a little bit, you know. But my brother wanted to be there. He wanted to look at the players. He wanted to see who was going, and that was fine with me if that's what he wanted to do. He was very conscientious when it came to that, and Tony was. The only thing I used to get mad at him, he would steal my red licorice out of my drawer. Why would he steal my red licorice? I used to go to him, and you were as a culprit as he was. You 2 guys.
Where was the red licorice?
They did it on purpose, just to aggravate
His secretary would tip us off, Teresa.
Teresa. Remember Teresa?
me. Teresa Huffman. Now,
Rob Ramage. Rob Ramage, who had 20 years in the league from Minnesota.
There's a guy I called and said to him, I got a chance to trade you if you want to go to Montreal. You might have a chance to win a Stanley Cup.
He did.
I says, talk to your wife. If you don't want to go, you're fine. You can stay here. I said, we're not going anywhere yet, and it's going to be a while. And he called me back, and he says, I think it'd be a good thing for me. I said, okay. And I traded him to Montreal, and then he won the Cup.
92, 93, the first year.
I was very, very good with the players because I played. And I knew that we weren't going to win. We weren't going to win. In fact, making the playoffs in the 3rd year was a surprise to me. I had thought about 5 years. 3rd year was when Terry Christ was supposed to move and Cash was supposed to take over because you had Grattan, Hammerlick, and all these other young guys that were coming. And Cash was great with the young guys. But we made the playoffs, and Crispy still wanted to coach.
Yeah.
And that really aggravated me. He knew the game plan. And I think that was one of the things that tore Terry and I apart. Because I told him the game plan was when I hired him. But he went over my head too to this Steve Odo, who had nothing to do with hockey, but he was the CEO with the Japanese, put him in here from Deloitte Touche. So he's an accountant. And he went over my head and got an extension on his contract. I didn't even know about it. And then a month into the season, Odo comes to me and says, I think we should fire Terry Crisp. I looked at him and I says, are you crazy? I says, who are we going to get to replace him? Where's the money coming from? You're going to put up the money? said, no. And eventually I did, because my brother said to me, remember, Henry, you were sitting right there. Tony said, if you ever want to get rid of him, Phil, now's the time, because you might not be able to later on. Because he knew the goddamn game plan. He knew it. And that really bothered me about Terry. But, so when we did, he had a great career in Nashville. Great career.
And I tell you, he was great coaching the team to
Yes,
start
he
with,
was.
and he was great publicizing the team.
Great.
And the fans
He was-
loved him, and he did a real good job selling.
But
along
he
with Phil.
shouldn't have done that, behind my back like that, and he shouldn't have. And we had a couple other guys do the same thing, go behind my back. And I don't know. I trust people. If they go once, I might let it go the first time. It's like with Bergeron, when I fired Bergeron in New York with 1 game to go, 3 times he went over my head. The first 2 times I said, you do it again, I don't care. When it is, you're gone. And he did it with 1 game to go. So I fired him. I ended up coaching myself in that game and in the playoffs. How much do you take? You know? Why? Because they think I'm soft or sucker? I didn't want to fire these guys. They have families. Cripe. But you got to live with what you preach. And that was the way I believed. And Crispy was a good coach for us, although he didn't like the young guys. Come on.
Oh.
He hated the young guys.
And he played the guys that drove Tony crazy. What was the
centerman, Mark Bureau.
Bureau?
He played him more than he played Brian Bradley. So finally I traded him.
On the next episode of Lightning Lore.
Who's the little goalie there? He's not bad.